Hi, Jose. Welcome to the Value Creation in Life Science series video. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. So to start with, I would like you to make a very small introduction so that audience knows you. Thank you.
Good morning, Saurabh. A pleasure talking with you. And thank you for reaching out and inviting me to share reflections and perspectives. I've been working in the pharma biotech industry for almost 30 years now, working both in big pharma and during the last 12 years in the biotech environment. I am a generalist. I have experience from target discovery, drug discovery, up to particularly clinical proof of concept. I've been involved as well in other elements of the value chain. And I'm focusing now in supporting biotech companies creation based on innovations generated in public research centers or private research centers.
Thanks, Jose. So I think your experience is very valuable to the audience who will be listening here, and also to the many biotech CEOs. So my first question to you is, as you know, the biotech returns are power law distributed, meaning most of the biotech returns are gained by very few companies. In fact, VC business is also like that. So given that, given your experience, how do you advise these companies to manage the risk and reward of their portfolio? Think about a platform-based company with several portfolio products. What would be your advice on to these companies? Thanks.
This is a very interesting question. According to power law, I think you will be advised to go for large numbers. And I think that's one of the important elements in portfolio management. In order to identify the outliers, being the outliers, the companies that will make it all the way up to the market, then you need to have a significant portfolio size. This is well understood by the big pharmaceutical companies, and that's why they distribute their risk and opportunity options in a large portfolio. And this is well understood by venture capital investors, where they know that they need to invest in a significant number of companies in order to have a chance to have the very few that will make the difference in relation to return of investment. Now, that leads to one important reflection, that is portfolio size. One of the things that we have a tendency to see, particularly coming from big pharma and going into biotech, is the idea of portfolio size. And then we start to probably try to create a portfolio where we distribute the resources, the limited resources available, which is one of the first mistakes usually done. So I think in biotech, you will see, and that's where I feel more comfortable, that it's better to be focused in a very limited number of options and allocate your capital into one or two options. And then the distribution of risk and opportunities will be made by the investment community. So the investors will try to invest in companies that could be focused on value creation, and usually in biotech, because of the limitation of funds, that is achieved by focusing in a very few opportunities, not in diversifying your portfolio, at least not too early.
Exactly. I'm with you on this because a company also needs to be very capital efficient to provide returns to the shareholders. So if you try focusing on too many products at early stages, that might lead to dilution and several other things, that might not be capital efficient. However, let's look at the other side of the coin and other side of the argument. A company that is focusing on cardiovascular, for example, might want to expand into other therapeutic classes like oncology, which has a greater market, for example, right? Or the other target classes. How do you respond to this question?
A company with limited capital, which is the case with most biotech companies, I think it is a critical decision to move from one therapeutic area to another. And that should be done as soon as possible, but not sooner. So once you have advanced your driver for value creation in one therapeutic area, probably it's time to start thinking in diversifying and building on the strength of your knowledge. Could be on a particular target, on a particular therapeutic agent, could be on a biological pathway, and building on your strengths is something very important for diversifying. But it takes time, and it takes much more effort to diversify into new therapeutic areas that people will tend to believe. So you need to understand the field. You need to understand the competitive landscape. You need to liaise with the key opinion leaders. You need to see what are the differential values of your offering, and that usually takes a lot of time. So diversifying, yes, that may be an option, but that should be the result of having a risk and opportunity management. Sometimes we talk about risks, and I think it's very important, because risks, I think yourself have said this in a recent video, is not a cortical, irrational activity. It's something that is more linked to our reptilian brain, to the limbic system. So risk aversiveness and risk propensity are not rational traits.
Correct.
And this is a very important thing, but opportunity management, it is. So I think it's very important to do a risk and opportunity management analysis in order to take diversification decisions, for instance. And in this case, very broad risk and opportunity assessment with good source analysis, and then involving particularly a variety of stakeholders, not only internal, but external people, in order to find opportunities for the diversification.
Thanks, Jose. So my next question is related to scaling. In fact, if you might have seen other videos, we talked about scaling with two other panel guests as well, Eduardo and Stephen Christoph. So my question is that portfolio management also requires scaling. So how do you find the right balance between scaling the company well and be capital efficient as well?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think my first reaction is that would be, of course, done in a framework of a strategic decision on why to scale up. What are you looking for scaling up? Just distributing risk, or exploiting opportunities, trying to find the outlier in the framework of power law that will give maximal returns. So if that is the case, of course, that will dictate the degree of capital that you would need. It's an opportunity that is being identified where there is a huge competitive landscape, where there is a lot of competitive pressure, there is a lot of technical feasibility. Then, of course, you will need a certain capital for expansion. So I think the important thing is to identify what the drivers are for expansion, and doing a strategic analysis, and that will dictate whether you will expand gradually, you will expand more aggressively, and of course that will determine as well the kind of capital or the level of capital that you will need to do so. So I think again, broad risk and opportunity assessments are key, and involving as many stakeholders as possible in order to support the decision-making processes.
Thanks, Jose. So my last question is related to COVID vaccines, nothing related to in biotech management as such. So as you have been the CEO of Aleix Therapeutics in the past, and you have worked in vaccine for HIV, so I think you know more about vaccines than we do. There is a confusion right now, and this COVID vaccines has created a kind of two different groups, anti-vaxxers and pro-vaxxers. So Why do you think that this has created such kind of controversy? Is it because government has not been able to communicate it well? That look, this vaccine is not 100% perfect, meaning it is not going to eliminate. In fact, even after having vaccines, you could get infected again, but it drastically reduces the severity of your disease, right? um, or people are confused by so many information floating in the social media. What do you think is, in your opinion?
I think when you refer, it's a very interesting question. When you refer to people, I understand you are assuming the difference between the people that develop and implement the vaccinations or the vaccines and the common people. I think in general, both parties are learning by doing with this pandemic. So we started with a very urgent need, which was to have a vaccine to manage a pandemic that was very severe at the beginning. So at that moment, we started to put a lot of money. And by the way, this was an indication of what you could do when you put a lot of money in a focused manner. So the achievement of having in less than a year since the sequence of the ancestral variant of the virus was discovered, in less than a year, the first vaccines were available. That was a significant achievement. Now, traditionally, it took a lot of time in the past to develop a vaccine. I think the quickest was a vaccine for mumps that took 4 years, but normally it takes a lot of time, particularly if you would like to develop a sterilizing vaccine. A sterilizing vaccine meaning a vaccine that will prevent dissemination of the pathogenic agents and therefore helping to reach herd immunity. So we started at the beginning to talk about herd immunity. The original vaccines prevented infections, but as the virus started to mutate, they lose their capacity to prevent infection, but they kept the capacity to prevent the evolution to severe disease and death. And even they are working with Omicron. But now, are the vaccines the best vaccines we could ever develop? Probably not. We know, for instance, that 3 doses were probably better than 1 or 2. Most vaccines, or we know many vaccines that require 3 doses. We are learning by doing, and I think governments, decision makers have not been very clear in communicating and perhaps creating a lot of hope. The vaccines are going to solve the problem. The vaccine has been very important, critical. The Omicron way had not been as it is if we were not having had the vaccines that we are having, at least in many countries in the world. So I think we are not doing a good work in communicating, and we people working in the field, we are not doing a good work in communicating. And then, of course, you have this in a moment where social media and news disseminates very quickly in a matter of seconds. We can hear what people in the US and in other countries would say about the vaccinations. They are interpreted and they are analyzed. And again, they are analyzed cortically in a rational way, but they are as well analyzed internally, subconsciously, by the reptilian brain that is aversive to risks, is aversive to the unknowns. Why I'm going to put a vaccine, and a lot of elements playing a role in making a decision. So I think we have not been very, very good in communicating. Not even that we have been extremely lucky in having these vaccines, because for respiratory viruses, our vaccine track records is not very huge historically.
Thank you very much, Jose, for your valuable time and your suggestion. For the audience, stay tuned for many such interesting conversations with experts, CEOs, and investors. And if you like our videos, do not hesitate to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in my next video. Thank you.